Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go.
This week, as last week did, a lot of powerful thrust to continue to move forward with the accelerated changes we're going to see in 2026 Fire Horse year. We're in between the eclipses, so we're in this momentum energy that is moving towards fulfillment of ultimate expression as we get to that full moon in the sign of Virgo. And as you may recall, this is the momentum from the solar eclipse new moon that happened in late degree Aquarius last week. So we see a lot of forward action, positive and negative. It all depends the action a person wants to take or a group wants to take. And the power of it can be counteracted by another group moving in perhaps an opposite direction, but with the same momentum. So the force and dynamic passion of whatever the wish or fulfillment may be for a group is greatly accelerated over this week. And as last week, the challenging aspect in the whole of how this all manifests comes in with the planet Mars. And that's because as we move through this week, especially later in the week, towards the weekend, there is this tension of whoever wants things certain ways and the force of either declaration or polarization or resolution, depending on how it is moving through. Keep in mind as we head towards the lunar eclipse that happens next week, that we can be propelled into very quick exponential change. What it requires is a spark, a dynamic, a thrust, a necessity, a epiphany, a clarion call, if you will, just the igniting a presence and demand for decisive action and change. So however small that may be in your daily life, or if you're engaged with a bigger project, program, institution, group, whatever it is that you want to focus, empower, and put attention to this week, find time for it, because we are in a process of igniting and firing up how we're moving forward and what can happen, especially over the next 6 months, because that's the eclipse energy that is at, if you think of an eclipse, the pairing, as last week fires were being lit or focus was being concentrated, and we are using the bellows, using the force of air energy to continue to have that expand and rise. So this energy can create something that very much sustains for months ahead. But what is essential at this point in time is focus. So let's say it's about something you're doing or engaged in, and you're using this week to give time to it, give prayer to it, give meditation to it, give purpose and actuality and love and passion to it. So in other words, it's not necessarily something that you are actively engaged in this week, although it certainly could be. It's something that you are giving presence of mind to, heart purpose, and believing that through focus, you are putting that like a bellows, that's soft but gently. If you've ever started a fire in the woods, or especially with limited fuel, it's so important to limit how much air you put into it to help that fire breathe and engage. You don't want to overwhelm it or you put it out. So pacing is super important over this week. And on Monday, we have this concentration of energy with that moon in Taurus conjunct late degree of Uranus as it's finishing its path through Taurus. And what's happening is we've got this kind of pressure cooker or slow cooker energy where we're watching it kind of take shape and metamorphose. I'm thinking of here in Mexico, there are some specific dishes that are made at certain time of year in celebration. And there's one specifically for Dia de Muertos. And it's what they do is they put the hot stones in a pit, an earthen pit, and then the meals, which are wrapped in banana leaves, are put on top of those hot stones, and then it's all covered in earth while it bakes. And so it's that kind of metamorphosis where we're nurturing, we're taking, we're internalizing, we're putting it into our core, our solar plexus energy that has so much to do with this is how I am forming this ego expression, which is nurtured from the second chakra creativity source, and of course, rooted in the root first chakra. So the first chakra basically anchors the second chakra, which is just that wonderful hearth of energy that holds our creative powers, fertile energy, and it can hold the expression, the self-expression of the solar plexus. So this is what is the foundation of how we can jettison into whatever action, subtle or dynamic, that we want to take this week. Concentrated energy, step by step. Breathe into it. Take your time. Chew on the essentials on Monday. Be slow to anger if something pokes you or stirs up. This can often happen to people even if they glance at the news. They can get derailed by whatever messages is out there that can stoke anger, confusion, or a sense of feeling disempowered. Use that reaction as fuel and don't get derailed by it. Think instead, okay, what am I reacting to? How do I put this in a place that powers up what I can do, that gives me more active expression of something that feels like positive action instead of just flailing out or wanting to respond in kind. Respond consciously. That's the way to utilize this week most effectively, and actually anytime more effectively. So the moon goes void, of course, at 5:29 p.m. Eastern time. And once the moon is void, of course, regardless of sign, we're in this place where it's better to work on things already in motion, take a breath, don't expect things to crystallize and form or come together during the void, of course, because what really is happening is we're taking a pause. And some of those pauses can be more productive than others. And so this void with the moon in Taurus can be more productive than others because basically we're being asked to what is restorative? What is something that really reminds us to be in place and observe even a small measure of beauty and comfort however we can. Sometimes it's just in the mind's eye because we're in a situation where everything feels fraught and difficult. But taking that space, because the moon, among other things that she rules or is her domain, is memory. And memory can be it can be toxic, it can keep us stuck, negative memories, or it can give us something that is very sweet and regenerative. And so being the gatekeeper of what memories come through your mind is a really wonderful way to continue to nurture and empower yourself and not feel stuck in old tapes or memories that are toxic or negative. It's important to recognize what pieces of the past have put you in certain places, but to not be dominated by them, to not consider memories or the past as your present or your future. However, a sweet memory, a loving memory, a regenerative memory can remind us that if that is not in our present or our future, we have that history, that story, and we can build on it. So we get to choose. We get to choose which part of our history, our memories, are what we continue to build on. And becoming conscious of what they are, positive and negative, helps us vet and sort. This is what I want to continue to build on, or this is what is basically an old story that I've learned from and I no longer want to live. The moon enters Gemini at 9:21 p.m. And once it's in Gemini, that's an air sign. It's mutable. It's very fluid in that we can use it how we need it, and thought to thought, idea to idea, sifting through, utilizing what's useful, and like flipping pages for what just is not. Very, very strong couple of days for us to continue to sort and adjust and decide where we're putting action or emphasis, whatever messages we want to get out or receive, become very strong over the next couple of days. Wonderful time for people who feel very tapped in with children or curiosity or childlike curiosity. Wonderful time for games, for puzzling out, for working through solutions. Keep in mind, this week, Mercury goes retrograde. So as we're going towards the retrograde, from our perspective, it looks like Mercury is slowing down, almost frozen in the sky. And when this is happening, back to memories, things can come up that, especially during the retrograde, that we haven't thought about or dealt with. Good and bad. I mean, some things come up because, yes, this is unfinished business that I need to address and put to rest. Or it comes up and we think, why am I thinking of this again? And many times it's having a fresh spin on it. And that can be very constructive. I know for myself, for some reason, that 3 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up that I'm experiencing, I'll be hit with a very old memory. And it can be a new eyes or processing way to see it, especially if we're thinking of something that maybe was traumatic or difficult. When we look at it with light years away perspective, and objectivity can come in, ideally. If we're still feeling an emotional charge in some way, it's important to understand, why is that? Am I identifying that in a way that is destructive, or in some cases constructive? And how do I look at it in a way that's more neutral, so that I can understand exactly what my emotional attachment is to this? And Gemini can give us not necessarily a distancing, but it can lead us to a sense of, I maybe should research this further, or talk to someone, or look into this in a different way. And that's one thing with Mercury retrograde coming up that can be very useful. Short-term therapy, or even if you're in a longer therapeutic process, often the retrograde periods are when we can unearth something or spin it in a different way, because we are reconsidering, we are making over, we are reacting and recovering, and all the REs, looking at in ways that can give us a fresh perspective. What Mercury retrograde is infamous for, of course, is when electronics break down, or there's missed messages, or signals are crossed, or appointments get all screwed up. And that just requires taking more time, or knowing that we're in that kind of arc, so that we don't set ourselves up for, oh boy, why did I make everything so tight? I just missed the train, or it's not going to work out. And it's important for us to give ourselves more space, because basically what's happening is Mercury, the communicator, is reminding us that, okay, you're so rewarded for your 24/7, like, hands-on responsiveness, and so many things coming in. It seems like there's a lot going on there. But if we don't take time to unplug and really listen deeply, we're just getting one-sided communication. And it's important to have that deeper communication, the deeper listening, because that's what allows us to vet, understand, critical think. So I actually really enjoy Mercury retrograde, even though it's not always an easy time for me, because I am a bit mercurial by nature. And so I do have to give myself more time to remember, and to float, and to allow myself that sinking in time, which I also really love to do. And I hope you all get time to do that. So the moon goes void, of course, at 6 p.m. on the 25th. And once that happens, it doesn't enter the sign of Cancer until 12:11 a.m. on Thursday, the 26th. Mercury goes retrograde shortly after at 1:48 a.m. Eastern Time. So with that long void, of course, moon in Gemini on Wednesday evening, especially right before Mercury retrograde, the ideal in my mind is to get off the electronics, maybe float into a book, or do things that just are not super demanding with ping pong communication, because we basically are in a kind of preparation time. It's almost like, it feels to me, it's almost like when you need to unplug your computer and just let it quiet, so that when it reboots, it goes through the whole clearing into the next cycle. And once that moon enters Cancer, Now we're in a lovely couple of days for that kind of floating and receiving. We come off this kind of intense beginning of the week of boom, 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 news, information flying, where we're asked to kind of settle in with the information and poise ourselves for what's coming up. It can be tremendous for anything a person is doing creatively, artistically, writing, anything that involves the earth, or, well, depending on where you are in the world, you're not necessarily gardening right now, but the preparation of what comes next when you're able to really sink your hands in the dirt and plan the garden, speaking metaphorically as well. So these days, when I look at Thursday, Friday, tremendously productive for finding the right connections, especially Thursday, if you're hoping to fulfill a project or aim in certain directions, contacts you make, new people you might meet, things that come through your radar. These are all offerings that you get to decide, oh, let me grab that opportunity, or let me reach out to this person, because it's very rich over these couple of days for being presented with the kind of people, opportunities, and situations, even financially, that can support you and have your back. It's important to realize with the Mercury retrograde, you don't necessarily want to sign the dotted line, shake hands, and start a contract, either a employee contract or for a house or anything that is a commitment. But sometimes that is where a person is at. And honestly, if you're born with Mercury retrograde, that can be totally okay, or depending how your horoscope works with whatever the situation may be that's presented. But overall, these couple of days are basically saying, be open to opportunity, keep your eyes open for situations or experiences that aren't necessarily your norm, but maybe ramp it up a notch, or bring in something that you haven't really thought about, but maybe a really sweet thing to consider. The moon goes void, of course, at 11:21 p.m. on Friday the 27th, and then it enters the sign of Leo at 3:17 a.m. on Saturday the 28th. So I would really recommend taking advantage of whatever might feed come your way, support you on Friday the 27th. One thing to keep in mind, well, midweek through Friday morning, is there's a Mars-Uranus picture in the sky that's challenging. It's a square. What I would suggest is, whatever you're doing or making happen, be aware of your surroundings. When Mars and Uranus are in a picture in the sky, things are happening very quickly. And that doesn't mean that it can't be something that is, whoa, I'm getting pushed in this certain direction. It feels much faster than I want to go, but oh my goodness, what an amazing thing to be propelling toward. That can be great, but it's the velocity and the being swept on that's really important, to have your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road, because we don't want to be distracted or overwhelmed with whatever's going on, the momentum of it, that we lose control or direction or personal agency about how things are happening. Fasten your seatbelt, eyes on the road, hands on the wheel. And you can transport, if I think of Star Trek, into another dimension, or a new kind of reality, something that feels like, whoa, I can't believe this is finally happening. So that void of course moon, oh, as I said, that happened late evening into the wee hours of Saturday. And once it's in the sign of Leo, this sets up a very, well, it could be a very glamorous weekend. It could be a lot going on, parties, events. The morning of Saturday might feel a little fraught for some of us if we feel ourselves at odds with someone who's trying to control a situation, either financially or with pulling weight. And sometimes that happens within, honestly. It's not necessarily a person outside of you, but you yourself who may be saying, oh, I can't afford that, or you can't do that, or it's not something you can make happen. And what's valuable is to really consider what is the reality here and what is an old tape that may be played. And as that comes into more clearer shape, we might decide to let something go or to lean more heavily into it. You get to decide based on conscious awareness. And that, if that's happening to you, that should pass somewhat, certainly by Sunday. The piece about this weekend to understand is the Leo moon dishes out a lot of ability to inspire and stoke up passion, and that's all great. We just want to make sure that it's not for its own sake, but that it's being built on something very sustainable. So it's a wonderful place for projects already in motion. Maybe not so much Saturday and Sunday are good days to start something or build a new liaison or project thing, but it can be tremendously productive for things already in motion that you're engaged with. And we prepare ourselves for that lunar eclipse that's happening on Tuesday.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.